Welcome to the Painting Experience podcast for April 2015. On the podcast, founder Stewart Cubley explores the potential of the emerging field of process arts and shares inspiration from his ongoing workshops and retreats. In this episode, returning from leading a 10-day painting intensive, Stewart talks about the ways process painting awakens a creative momentum that becomes available in all aspects of our daily lives.
I've just returned from my annual 10-day workshop on the island of Molokai in Hawaii. And I must say there's something about the experience of painting for 10 days that is really quite impactful for people. And we have an email circle after people return as a way of staying in contact and integrating back into so-called normal life after the long painting time together. And I received an email recently from one of the participants, and in it she used the phrase being urged to, in quotes, embrace this process life into all areas of me. And I was really struck by that because this is really my experience of process art and is really the bigger picture behind the experience itself. Because on one hand, process painting is about painting. It's about the practice of painting. But on the other hand, it's a metaphor, and it's pointing at something quite a bit larger than painting itself. And it's really pointing at a way of being. And the painting is really a practice of this way of being. And I think when she mentioned about embracing this process life into all areas of me, I just felt she was referring to this larger dimension that exists in the painting process. Because when you paint with a group of people in process, you're painting in silence, and you are painting quite a few hours a day, and in this particular instance, for many days in a row. And there's a quality of openness, and there's a quality of acceptance that's built into the group experience, in which no one has to explain themselves. No one has to be anything other than what they are at the moment. And there's an encouragement to just be very fully with your own experience and to allow that in a seamless interface between your inner and your outer life. And what I mean by that is when you're painting for process, you're paying attention to the serendipity that occurs on the painting, but you're also paying attention to the serendipity that occurs internally in terms of your feelings. Because you really don't know what you're going to be feeling prior to feeling it, just as you don't know what's going to appear on the painting prior to painting it. And so there's a practice of letting go into that, of becoming more comfortable with that quality of not knowing, and therefore allowing the serendipity, allowing yourself to move into the space without having an agenda and without having to determine ahead of time what it is you're going to do or experience, as well as what you're going to feel. And there's a very beautiful interface and kind of dance that occurs between the two after a number of days of painting for process, in which you really see that it's really one process happening. There's not two. It seems like there are two sides, but feelings arise within you. They move with color and form onto the paper. What appears on the painting moves back into you and elicits new feelings and new ideas and new imaginative imagery and forms and color, and that then goes back towards the painting and appears on the painting, but it appears in a way that you didn't expect it, and again it surprises you and requires you to surrender to that appearance, and then that opens up new feelings, and there's this kind of dance. There's this wonderful, beautiful dance back and forth between the so-called inner life and so-called outer life. And I think this is what the metaphor of process art points towards. So when people come back from 10 days of painting or even a shorter workshop, this question is lying there. This question is confronting you, is like, what does it mean to bring this way of being back into my life? And maybe that's not really aptly characterized, because it's not as though you bring it back. You have lived it in the experience, and you've awakened something through doing that. I guess the real question is that awakening available to you in our lives, which have become so incredibly busy and so incredibly nonstop? Is there a deep memory? Is there a cellular memory of that way of being in which there's this simplicity of, first of all, not knowing, of being open to the serendipity, being open to the unexpected, and then, of course, trusting that, being willing to say yes to that rather than no, because our first impulse often is to say no, and then saying yes to that, then moving with that, allowing that to appear. When you're painting, it appears on the page. When you're living, how does it appear? What does it mean to say yes to it and let it appear? And then, what does it mean, after having let it appear, in whatever way that it does, to let that engage you and to further your own process and to bring new feelings? So this is really a much bigger question, and I might say that it's not without struggle. And I think this is another one of the important lessons that come out of a prolonged period of painting, is that you might go to Hawaii especially thinking, okay, I'm going to be painting for 10 days in paradise. It's going to be bliss. I'm going to be just in ecstasy for the whole time that I'm there. And of course, that doesn't happen. We tend to bring some unwanted baggage along with us. We pack a little too heavily, you might say, and things arise that are challenging and sometimes actually crisis-producing. And I really value those moments. I know that those are inherent in the creative process itself, and those are considered in the same light as anything else that appears as a person is painting. Is when there is struggle, what does it mean to engage that? What does it mean to engage the process of struggle or of difficulty or of blockage? And one of the beautiful lessons that come out of this is that through the very act of engagement, a door opens and you find yourself continually moving. You're not going to stay stuck in one place. If you're being willing to be present fully with where you are and not turn away from it, then it moves. And that the life is really in that engagement, in presence and movement. It's not in producing a particular outcome. It's not in having it look a particular way, and it's not about having a particular feeling. It's embracing fully where you are. So this is important because in our daily living, these challenging moments and moments of struggle arise, and to have the sense that they are not separate from our own creative process. They are the creative process. And being willing to engage them in life, much as you would in painting, that then there's the possibility to really translating process arts into process living, you might say. That is a very real possibility, and it's not something you achieve, it's an ongoing discovery. It creates a situation in which you realize there's nothing I have to be afraid of. I don't have to be afraid of this particular kind of experience. I don't have to be afraid of this particular color. If it's dark, if I'm painting something dark and it's getting heavy and it's maybe even getting sad, I can engage that fully. I don't have to be afraid of that because I know that it's the living of it fully is where the satisfaction is. And that if I live it fully, it's going to move and it's going to change. And this becomes cellular in a certain sense through doing the painting process. This becomes more familiar to us. It becomes more available to us. it becomes kind of an awakening in which we realize, oh yes, right, I forgot. I don't have to reject this. Let me get interested in this. Let me see where this wants to go. What new doors might this open?
You can learn more about the painting experience and find a list of upcoming process painting workshops by visiting our website at www.processarts.com. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please share it with a friend. The theme music for this podcast comes from Stefan Jacob. We thank you for listening and hope you'll join us again soon.